If you've ever told a struggling reader to try harder and then watch them shut down, melt down, freeze, or just avoid the work altogether, this is why and what actually helps. From the outside, it looks like avoidance or laziness, but it's actually cognitive overload. Hello, I'm Rebecca the Reading Hacker, and I help struggling readers crack the code and find confidence in reading. Today I want to zoom in on reading itself and why just try harder is not helpful, especially for struggling older readers. And we're also going to give 3 practical, concrete ways that you can support struggling readers. This isn't about kids not caring, although sometimes kids don't care. Let's just be real. But that's not what this is about. It's about what reading actually demands of the brain, and when that demand is higher or bigger than the capacity that the learner has. All right, so let's talk about what we think is happening versus what is actually happening. So I know a lot of us have said, all right, focus, try harder. I mean, I've said to my kids, look into my soul, like look right here. Try and get them just to focus. And we think it's an effort issue, but it's not effort. It's actually a load issue. Cognitive load means mental. Working memory. Now, working memory is the brain's desk. I want you to imagine like a desk, okay? Some people, it's very messy. And some people, it's very, very tidy, and it can hold multiple different things. And different people have different working memory capacities. What we have to remember is that reading is not just one skill. It's multiple skills, all right? Has to do with the sounds and the letters and putting those together and then finding the meaning. And then you have, the context, the executive function that comes in and puts it all together and you hold it in your head. There's multiple steps here, okay? And reading takes up almost all those steps. Most working memories, average, usually can hold about 4 things. And that usually is all of reading. And most of the time, people who struggle with reading have issues with working memory, especially something called verbal working memory. So just think of like there's this working memory and then like one little leg of it is verbal. And we know that language and reading go hand in hand. So verbal working memory is that ability to hold that language in your head. Now, from personal experience, I have terrible verbal memory. All right. Sometimes when you see me film, I have to look down at what I'm about to say, and I don't script everything out, but I have to look at numbers because numbers and things just fly out of my head. So that's a personal thing I've always struggled with, which is one of the reasons why I was a struggling reader. But let's just talk about some of the things that verbal memory encompasses, okay? So as I said, I looked down. Holding sounds or words in your head. Think of those really long words, being able to blend them together. If you have pretty low verbal memory, it's going to be hard to remember the first part and the next. Really long sentences. We're talking those compound, complex sentences that have all those commas and semicolons. By the time you get to the end of it, you've forgotten what you've heard before. And especially following multi-step directions that are verbal, all right? Someone throws something at me, 4 or 5 things, like, what? Huh? What'd you say? I think I sound like some of my kids there. All right, so what cognitive overload actually looks like, okay? Let's break that down. Reading lines over and over again. Having to go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, walk down the hallway, see somebody, see the principal, see the secretary, see the guy delivering something to the school, because just for some reason you got to leave the classroom, okay? That's one of those things. Goofing off, clowning around, things that drive classroom teachers crazy or drive parents crazy. Giving up fast, saying this is stupid, I don't want to do this, who cares, I don't care about this, why do I need to do this? Ugh. So a lot of times those behaviors look like a motivation problem. And we'll sit down and we'll say, okay, let's talk about your motivation. What do you want to do? What's going on with this? And when you dig, you're like, oh, wait a minute, it's actually a cognitive load problem, a capacity problem. We said the working memory is like a desk, all right? Most people can hold 4 things. It's a capacity. Some people have a smaller desk, and so certain tasks overload them more than others. Think of it like this. If you have a nice big box of papers and boxes and you go sit it on a big dining room table, there's plenty of room for more. But if you have like a little like TV stand and you try to put a big old box on it, it's so overloaded, it might break the tray, it might flip over, it might not even fit. It comes to capacity. All right, there are two ways to look at cognitive load. And the reason this is important is because the way we're going to assist students depends on these types, okay? So first off, there's intrinsic load. That's the learning itself. The, decoding the words, learning the vocabulary, holding the meaning of the sentence, doing the math problem. The second cognitive load is extraneous load. Now, this is sometimes considered some of the unnecessary. It's the how we're teaching or how we're working. Extra mental effort is being put on the brain because of how we are going about it. This can be an organized worksheet, long directions, longer assignments, multi-step type things that might take a little more cognitive flexibility going back and forth. Another thing we need to point out is that the try harder or let's go, 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 go can actually have major issues with the working memory and the cognitive load that we're talking about. Anxiety, stress, depression can actually shrink how much you can keep in your working memory. Emotions. We've all felt that. We've all felt we couldn't keep our mind set on what we were doing because we were worried or scared or something was going on. So the emotional component, the shame, it's not just not feeling good about yourself, but it's also hurting the learner when it comes to working on things in the classroom. And just to point out, and by middle school, many struggling readers or struggling learners have had so much failure because their cognitive load, their working memory is so overloaded that they just give up and they just don't care. They check out. Or they cause that behavior problem. Or they get poor grades, or even maybe just decent enough grades to squeak by. And then sometimes it looks like that those who struggle with cognitive overload, we don't have grit because we don't want to push, we don't want to try. And it's not that we don't have grit. It's that it takes so much grit to do what some people can do in an instant. So you know those kids that are missing all those assignments and not doing any of the work? Well, it turns out that students with weak working memories complete 70% less classwork than those other peers. By reducing cognitive overload, we can increase performance and retention by 30 to 40%. So our kids learn better. So let's see what we can do to help. So my 3 takeaways with this are going to be on extraneous cognitive load, because those are the things you can do tonight, right now, in your classroom, at home, that are going to help. And these are just 3. There's a plethora of more. Just let me know down in the comments if you want to know more. Number 1, reduce the text. Now, I'm very clear here. This does not mean that you're reducing to where they're not going to do it. All right. This can also be a kind of chunking where you're kind of doing bits and parts. But I will say this. If there's a portion of the text you don't need them to read, it has nothing to do with the skill, nothing to do with what you're doing, you can make that decision just not to have them read it. All right. But make sure it's not going to impact or water down the content. That's very, very important. That's really like the difference between like an accommodation and a modification. Accommodation, we're just supporting, okay? We're not changing or modifying anything. Now, taking a piece of paper with a text, let's say it has 3 to 4 paragraphs, all right? Taking a paper and covering the first part and just having them read the first part, or having them using a highlighter and letting them know we're only going to do this first part. And you can do this at home as well, where you chunk up certain parts of text that they have to read at home. All right, you just got to read this portion right now, that we're going to read a little bit later. And I know at home you like to get into your homework time and just get right through it all, and so they can have the evening, to do what they need to do. And there's so many things families do in the evening, but sometimes we have to go things about a little different way. Sometimes the cognitive load is just not there to spend an hour on homework. It's just not there, so you're going to have to chunk it up. Reducing the text does not reduce expectations. It just reduces the cognitive load. Number 2, vocabulary and background knowledge front loading. So there's this word in education called front loading, and that's really when we give kids information before we teach them. That's what it is. So if you have a child or a kid who you know has a struggling working memory or cognitive loads, send home vocabulary or information prior for parents to do at home. One particular way for teachers and parents to communicate is you can take a note card, have the kid write the word in the corner, and then a student-friendly definition, and then have them draw a little picture, maybe give a little example, and have them like answer a question that goes along with it. Now, these cards can be sent home with parents, and parents can review these words with their kids so they see exactly what we're talking about. Number 3, separate your reading and writing, and this can be in the classroom or at home. Okay, so if you have a task you have to do, and there's a reading section and a writing section, and maybe the reading section has some comprehension questions and a writing, splitting it up. I do this for unit tests quite frequently. Kids do the reading, the questions on the one day, and then I'll have kids do the writing on the next day. They're doing both sections. You're just splitting it up. Another really great thing to do is to talk it out with the kids. You can talk it out at home or in the classroom. A lot of times you can have kids create a mental model on the board. Some people call it a web, some people call it a mental model or a graphic organizer, but that brainstorming. A lot of teachers skip the brainstorming because, oh, let's get going, let's go. A lot of parents skip the brainstorming. No, brainstorming is important because it's literally taking that working memory, that extraneous cognitive load, and it's making a visual representation to where they don't have to remember it, like right there. You're not writing it for them. You're not answering it for them. You're giving them the parking lot or the working memory space to be able to do the task. Working memory strategies takes time. And when you're on a schedule in a classroom, it's really difficult. But it's something that has to be done because not everybody learns at the same pace. And struggling readers don't need more pressure to prove that they care. They need less cognitive load and more targeted support. And asking for help and getting what you need to be successful is not weak. It's not demeaning, and it doesn't mean you're not good enough. Because I know that that's a lot sometimes what we tell ourselves. But getting what you need to be successful, that's what every human being wants to do and tries to do. Recommendation. Love this book. Okay. What's really great about it, Executive Skills in Children and Adolescents, a practical guide for assessment and intervention. There are assessments and interventions in here. The interventions are fantastic. Like it has a whole bunch, like if this happens, try this. If this happens, try this. Like you could literally like do a documentary, not me, on this. It also goes through how to coach these kids. It talks about learning how to control impulsive behavior. But there's a whole part on cognitive load and so forth. And I really wanted to suggest to any parent or teacher, it's pretty user-friendly as you go through. I'll have the link down in the comments if you're interested. Just click on it. It'll take you to be able to pick that up. When we give explicit instructions and precise and clear strategies, all learners can learn. So go ahead, crack the code, and unlock the reader.